Cowboy Bebop is considered to be one of the most influential anime of all time. It consistently ranks in top 10 of all time lists and is cited as a gateway drug of sorts for anime, both for its role in Western popularization of the format and its popularity even amongst those who may have never seen an anime before. It's one of my personal favorites and features some of the most iconic scenes, characters, songs, and, well, everything really. But what if I told you this almost wasn't the case? That Cowboy Bebop wasn't always the prolific and beloved series that it is today? Well, we're gonna look at just that, so count down from 3 because it's time to jam. Before we can fully understand why Cowboy Bebop struggled to start, we have to take a step back to the 1980s in Japan. Anime was a different beast at that time. Some less traditionally cartoony programs gained large followings, like Lupin III, a large Bebop influence, and Gundam, which respectively took large shares of the era, with Dragon Ball later shooting up in the charts in the mid-80s as well. But many of the dominant forces were light-hearted anime. Things like Doraemon, Saze-san, Paramon, and Astro Boy. You can probably see the visual similarities here that represent the medium at the time. This trend continued up into the 90s, with a few serious names like Fist of the North Star creeping in for moments in the sun, but a majority of the names remained the same, these long-running lighthearted anime with even more similar ones entering contention. Now 1994 sees a jump of Dragon Ball to the top, but also the insane rise of Sailor Moon crushing its other competition right away. A feel-good anime ruled this landscape. They were hot, so they kept getting made. Let's take a sidetrack and look at some of the even more slightly adult series that were popular though. Dragon Ball, Gundam, Lupin III, and Fist of the North Star for a decent group. Although they are all very different series, they each have a protagonist who's either very confident and lighthearted, or powerful and heroic. You could say they're all great escapism series, where a viewer could live out a fantasy quite easily of being a master thief, a powerful warrior, and so on. Many would even say that these sometimes more adult series weren't deep or profound media at all, that they were about entertainment over thought completely. They weren't bright, happy, fun times, but also didn't try to go in the opposite direction. That was simply the reality of anime at the time. Again, that's what sold, so that's what perpetuated. But 1995 is an important year to stop on, because something new hit the scene that year. Neon Genesis Evangelion, one of the most prolific, controversial, and popular series of all time. And companies still manage to cause controversy around it more than 20 years later. Personally, and I will likely get some heat for this, I have yet to see more of Evangelion than the first couple episodes. It's one I'll watch for sure, I just have an ever-growing list of shows I have said I'll address. So I'll be speaking based on others' writings on the anime here. But there's no doubt that it was something different. With its decades-long dominance, Gundam had shaped the mecha genre. It was about cool guys jumping into giant suits of armor and saving the day or slaying all their foes. Looking at Evangelion from the outside, you might expect the same with its focus on mechas. So it's 1995 and you tune in, excited for a new lighthearted mecha experience, and you see Shinji for the first time. I mean, go ahead and give most annoying anime protagonists a Google and see which name always comes up. Now, this wasn't a first for anime, having a protagonist who was considered whiny and unlikable, but it was different. This wasn't about escapism and giant robot fights, but a character-driven drama where there weren't clear heroes, just kids with problems like you and I. I found this was put best on an old Evangelion forum by user KarmaBurn. In any other anime, the main character would have jumped in and piloted the EVA for the first time his father asked him to. He wouldn't have sat there and complained about how he was being used as a tool while a monster was destroying his surroundings. In any other anime, the main character would have been gung-ho, "Sure, whatever you say, Dad," about piloting the mech. But in the director's vision, he wasn't. Would you have been if you were in the main character's situation? And this difference wasn't down to just the characters. It hit on religious symbolism in a dark setting, making it distinct from other appearances like in Trigun. Sure, Trigun had a literal priest in Wolfwood, but it was built on the massive goofball that is Vash, and Wolfwood's defining trait wasn't religion, that was just the irony of the situation. NGE used it as part of its message, and it had more overt violence, psychological elements, and even more we could go over. It was a dark, depressing series in an era of Studio Ghibli hits. Add on to that its controversial and confusing ending that sparked wars over whether it was genius or just pretentious and confusing, and you have an anime that, although it eventually changed the entire landscape and allowed a future swell of darker themed anime, incurred harsher censorship policies from TV Tokyo, divided fans, and created a fear for developing controversial series. Now, Evangelion and its movies wrap up in 1997. Around the same time, hype was truly building for something big being produced across the Pacific Ocean. An entire generation eagerly awaiting the return of their favorite childhood movies, Star Wars was coming back to the big screen. Announcing back in 1994 that he would be writing his previously cancelled prequel movies, George Lucas started a bubble in the entertainment industry, with every toy company wanting a property with spaceships to garner some easy sales. And with a 5-year span between announcement and release, people were eager to scratch the space-based itch, and Bandai was no exception. They tasked their anime-based subsidiary, Sunrise, with crafting something with spaceships as a central element. One of their producers at the time, Masahiko Minami, approached a relatively young name to see if he had any ideas. The man had been on production duties before and co-directed the series Macross Plus, but didn't have a solo title under his belt, and was certainly ambitious for the chance. That man was Shinichiro Watanabe. Speaking on that moment years later, he said, "After about 2 to 3 days of deliberating, something I had thrown together over the course of an hour known only as Bebop surfaced." With a central space element, Bandai saw the perfect opportunity to cash in on toy sales and accepted the offering of a show called Cowboy Bebop. Finally able to craft something of his own, Watanabe and crew began work on the anime, getting up to the series' 4th episode, Gateway Shuffle. But the project wasn't out of the woods yet. Seeing the work that had been done so far, Bandai decided to pull out of the sponsorship. Why give up on this opportunity? Well, as the director himself said, they didn't think such a dark and subdued portrayal of spacecrafts would do any favors to their toy sales. Bebop wasn't what they were expecting at all, and it didn't appeal to the audiences most likely to rush out and buy the latest merchandise. Sure, there were flybys and dogfights, but portrayed at the same time as drug smuggling and abuse. This wasn't a show about spacecraft, it was a show where there just so happened to be spacecraft. This dropped partnership also explains something interesting about the series, why there's so much more space combat at the beginning than at the end. Left alone, the project was in consideration to be cancelled, only to be saved by a Bandai offshoot, Bandai Visual, who filled the role their parent company had dropped. And from there, production of Cowboy Bebop continued, reaching its full 26 episodes. It would be naive to say this was all smooth sailing, however. Sunrise and Watanabe staff were excited about the project and enjoyed working on something unique. Enthusiastic about their upcoming gem, the creator of record was listed as Hajime Yatate, a collective pseudonym for the entire Sunrise animation staff. The only issue they took was with the director's planned ending, one of the first aspects of the show he had imagined after only Spike himself. They feared it would make continuing the work afterwards impossible. At the time, 26-episode anime weren't as standard. Many of the popular series continued on for years and years, or over various iterations. Look at how many episodes the most popular anime of 1998 had. However, after consideration, Watanabe stuck to his guns, saying later, "I thought people would ask for more, and it would end up being something like Star Trek. I thought it would be a problem if I kept creating a new Cowboy Bebop series for the next 30 years until I'm an old man. So I thought if I finished it, I wouldn't have to draw anymore." The real issues, however, came from internal stakeholders who held concerns about the show's adult nature. Drugs, guns, gambling, bombings, these were things you didn't see in popular or well-received anime. Our ratings weren't hot. Think about the popular series we went over. Even the more adult-aimed anime didn't have these elements. Especially with series like Dragon Ball Z, guns were portrayed as weak weapons wielded by people without power, and Goku tried his hardest to avoid any death, sparing even his most hated enemies. Bebop, in short, was more real, despite its extraterrestrial setting. And this is where Evangelion rears its head once again. Sure, it was popular and opened the door for many other series, but as of the time, it was mostly just itself and 1997's movie Princess Mononoke. It wasn't accepted yet that darker anime succeeded, it was just a fledgling idea. Bebop was just another test on that frontier. Plus, NGE's final episodes just caused massive controversy for their completely unconventional structure, and here you have an anime in Bebop that's directed like 24 mini-movies. It was unconventional and coincidentally terrible timing for it. They'd committed to something that evolved into quite the risk just based on when it was going to be released. Even more, I'm sure they didn't want to be the second anime in 2 years that forced TV Tokyo to apply higher content censorship. Evangelion hadn't quite opened the door as much as it cracked it open to sneak a quick peek. Add to that an over-budget and past schedule status, and Watanabe's first solo project could very well have been his last ever. Years later, he joked, "If they hadn't, you might see me working the supermarket checkout counter right now." And TV Tokyo almost let that be the case. Out of 26 episodes, only 12 aired in 1998. Episodes 2, 3, 7 through 15, 18, and a special called Mishmash Blues were broadcast, cutting out the drug use in Asteroid Blues and Mushroom Samba, the extra violence of Ballad of Fallen Angels, Black Dog Serenade, Requiem for a Clown, and both parts of Real Folk Blues, terrorist actions in Gateway Shuffle, Wild Horses, and Cowboy Funk, and the remaining episodes Sympathy for the Devil, Boogie Woogie Feng Shui, that one's honestly a good call, I have to say, Brain Scratch, and Hard Luck Woman for likely similar reasons. Although these reasons aren't directly stated anywhere, they relate more to events in Japan around the 90s. On March 20th, 1995, the Aum Shinrikyo cult devised and executed a sarin chemical attack on the Tokyo subway. Punctured bags of the potent nerve agent were left on main subway lines, causing some to choke and vomit, even leaving others blinded and paralyzed. It's considered to be the country's worst terror attack, killing 13 and injuring thousands. Later that year, All Nippon Airways Flight 857 was hijacked with the demand for Japan to release Shoko Asahara, the now captured leader of the very same Aum Shinrikyo cult. Safe to say, the mid-90s were a time when many wanted to avoid drawing ire over terroristic portrayal, explaining why even remotely comparable episodes of Bebop were cut. The earlier 90s also saw riots over police-citizen relations, murder of officers mistaken for rival gang members, Yakuza wars that spilled over onto average citizens, and the chilling and violent Kobe child murders, further explaining the turn away from guns and violence in anime. The times were trying, and many wanted to get away rather than stare it in the face. And rating-based TV stations would rather play safe bets than risk drawing ill will from exhausted citizens and an on-edge government. So with all these episodes that TV Tokyo refused to air, Watanabe and his team created an episode I had never seen until recently called Mishmash Blues, a faux philosophical rambling by all the characters over clips from the anime, even starting on footage from the cut episode 1. It doesn't continue the story in any way, but ends on this screen just before the credits. Cowboy Bebop, 11 episodes and a special in, was cancelled in June 1998 with low ratings. For a second, it appeared as if Watanabe's worst possible case had come true, as his first ever solo directorial credit had just flopped, despite the love that went into it from all sides and its unconventional developmental cycle. Nowhere is this love and nonconformity more apparent than the music composed by Yoko Kanno. Watanabe and Kanno had worked together on Macross Plus, and he reached out to her about his jazzy new project, one she nearly turned down, saying she wasn't a fan of jazz. However, she agreed nonetheless, creating the group The Seatbelts to score the anime. Despite not being a fan of the anime's music preference, Yoko delivered one of the most iconic scores in history, and Watanabe attributed part of this to that very artist work, Dissonance. He said, "She inspired me to create songs that I didn't ask for, and I was inspired by her music to make scenes that I originally didn't even plan." She even influenced the work in other ways, unintentionally inspiring the character Ed. Having met on their former works, Watanabe remarked later at a panel with Yoko, "Before Cowboy Bebop, I met this composer, and the composer was female and very eclectic. And during the production, she would just kind of roll around on the floor and do very strange things. And on occasion, she would make strange noises. I thought it would be interesting if I could put her in as a character in my next series." In every way, there was a push and pull synergy that evolved into something new on the project, where usually separate branches converged into one beast of pure feel. The best example of this is the originally unaired and now prolific Greenbird scene. This was unplanned, but the song inspired the crew to craft a scene to go with it, and now it lives rent-free in the mind of anyone who's ever seen Cowboy Bebop. And this brings up a good point about Bebop. An anime so reliant on its overall mood and feel, with important moments interspersed between genre-fluid mini-movie episodes, is quite a delicate balance. Let's look at the first impressions people would receive of this cut-up Bebop. The intro of Asteroid Blues is so important to set the stage for what follows. The music box-style track Memory, with flashbacks of Spike's past in black and white, tells you a lot of what you need to know. It lays down some noir as he walks away, a single rose on the ground, comes in with an example of the narrative structure, showing you only what's necessary and letting you know to hold on for something big to come, which we eventually see in episode 5, which also didn't air. Then, as he smiles, bullets whizzing past, the screen cuts to black just in time for the iconic first notes of Tank to blare out in all their glory. This is Bebop in just a few moments, and you've probably never seen anything like this in 1998. Not even mentioning how well the actual episode reinforces all of this. Our first looks at the desolate world our characters live in, their struggles, and bits of comedy that lighten things up just enough while developing Jet and Spike. Instead, viewers in 1998 saw the unintended first episode of Stray Dog Strut. It starts off with Tank first, uncoupled from its grounding intro. Still amazing, but out of the context it was meant to be first seen in. Then we open on Hakim in a bathroom stall. In a show where villains come and go, people must have thought, why would they open on one and not a recurring character? And we only get a glimpse of Spike's extremities before Big Shot comes on, showing off the case before the characters, the biggest appeal of the show. And it stays like this for a while, showing Hakim off over Spike and Jet, followed up by an episode that's good, but nowhere near as encapsulating and developmental for our leads. We don't see Spike observing the last moments of a beautiful woman, driven to kill her love by the pressure of her criminal life as he unravels in front of her, a situation all too relatable to Spike's past, and another one that he's powerless to change. It's a perfect opener, and Stray Dog Strut just doesn't have the same chops. Plus, think about some of the episodes that were cut. Ballad of Fallen Angels is a critical point of interest to keep watching. Sympathy for the Devil really brings in these somber and lonely tones. Jet's backstory continuation and pivotal moment for his character of Black Dog Serenade was gone, and it even cuts off the finale episodes for every character among more amazing missed moments. Cowboy Bebop is a slow burn that doesn't really come together until the final moments when you realize just how much every moment before that has truly meant. And the original viewers never got to experience that, the genre all of its own. But all of this changed in October 1998 when the satellite network WoW picked up Cowboy Bebop. Japan had much looser restrictions on satellite TV, meaning now Bebop could be shown in its entirety as intended. And now, in its full glory, the series took off. The 1998 season Anime Grand Prix awarded it Best Male Character for Spike and Best Voice Actor for Faye's Megami Hayashibara, in addition to the second Best Series award and high accords for both individual songs and episodes. In 1999, it won many of these same awards. Japan had a new darling, and combined with the success of NGE but with less controversy, began paving the way for countless anime to follow in its non-traditional footsteps. But its influence doesn't just end there. Moving forward to 2001, something new was about to blossom in the US. Anime wasn't popular there, and Bebop's creator himself stated, "This is something I've said many times in the past, but when I was working on Cowboy Bebop, Japanese animation was not very popular outside of Japan, so I never expected it would be so popular in the US." But his creation got a foot in the door at a new offshoot of Cartoon Network, Adult Swim. The 1990s was a turning point in Western animation, where interest in more teenage and adult-oriented shows was growing. The Simpsons was dominating from 1990 onward and provided a path forward for many similar shows, like more Matt Groening work such as Futurama and Mike Judge's Beavis and Butthead, and Texas's very own anime and one of my unabashed pleasures, King of the Hill. Plus, Cartoon Network had seen success from some of these newfangled Japanese animations in Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, so when they premiered Adult Swim on September 2nd, 2001, they included a now critically acclaimed series from across the Pacific in their midnight slot, Cowboy Bebop, the first anime to premiere on the block and nowhere near the last. As for Cowboy Bebop's lasting legacy from there, I feel just the very existence of videos like this says all it needs to. Hi there, you're probably thinking right now, wow, Professor V-Roll, you look a lot worse than usual. And you'd be right, I do look a lot worse than usual because I'm coming at you immediately after I finished editing everything you've seen prior in this video, au naturel, crazy editing hair, all of that. Because this has been a massive behemoth of a project. It snowballed into 22 hours over 2 days, so it was 11-hour work days. More this week, just finishing it on Monday, and you're seeing it Tuesday. It was supposed to be a side project, snowballed out of control. If you've seen my posts, you know all about that. So basically, what I'm getting at here with this one is, if you want to bump this one up, leave a comment, even if it's just bump to push it up. Leave a like, share it, any of that stuff. This would be the video where I'd super mega appreciate that. You know, you don't have to do anything. I'm just glad that you're here and watching it. But if you want to support just even for free, just do that stuff to bump this one up a little bit, because it was a lot of work. It's also a video I wanted to make because, and another reason I'd like to see a lot of people see it, is because this is one of the most interesting stories in anime that I've ever found. Cowboy Bebop has such an influential piece, along with NGE and Akira and a few other things that really helped push this darker anime vibe through, are so critical and so important because they undeniably have influenced everything we've seen since then. All the anime that I love, all these dark anime that might not have come about if it wasn't for these anime. And you can just, if you read any of the interviews or look at any of the panels, you can see so much love went into this behind the scenes too. Watanabe has so many jokes in these panels where someone will say something like, "Oh, what was your favorite episode?" And he'll go, "Oh, I hated all of them." And then they'll be, you know, he laughed after it. He seems like such a great guy. It seemed like an amazing project to work on. It has such an interesting history behind it, how it came about. I could ramble on for a whole nother 20 minutes about just why I think this story is so interesting and should be shared. So this is one that I definitely think people should know about, and I didn't see much on it, so I wanted to bring it to you all today. So if you want to bump all that stuff, I'll stop reminding you, just drop it in there one last time. But if you're new, consider subscribing for more videos like the ones on screen right now. But anyway, I'll stop rambling. I kept it to under 3 minutes, which is cool, and just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Just accept the terrible outros at this point.